Is liberty dying where you live? Escape to Keene at freekeene.com.
Speak to Senate Bill 498.
I would, please.
I
signed a sheet in the back, but I guess it wasn't.
Sorry, I didn't get up.
Okay, could you just identify yourself for the record?
Sure. I'm Ian Freeman. I am from Keene and one of the co-chairs of the New Hampshire Liberty Party. I wanted to address a few of the things that have been said up here. I have mixed feelings about this piece of legislation. As someone who supports more freedom, I like the idea that there wouldn't be a mandatory Class A being charged on people for possession. However, it still does leave the door open for someone to be charged with a Class A anyway. But my main concern with the bill is that it increases the fine from $350 to $500. And what I heard earlier from one of you was the idea that the fine would somehow prohibit someone or discourage someone from using cannabis in the future. And having spent a lot of time in the, let's call it the underground, the drug underground, I'm familiar with many people who've been arrested for possession of drugs of various different sorts, but marijuana specifically. And I know plenty of people who, these are the poorest of people usually. Typically, these laws are not enforced on the most wealthy ends of society. It's more likely that the police are going to pull over someone in a beat-up car who doesn't have a lot of money than someone driving a BMW and who can easily afford to pay $500. But for somebody who is poor, who these laws will affect the most, the $500 just puts them in more debt. It makes their life more difficult. Already you have people, I spend a lot of time as a sort of a courtroom observer, and so I see a lot of people in front of these judges for these simple possession crimes, and almost everyone can't afford to pay the $350 right up front. They almost always have to get on a payment plan with the courts. And the payment plan usually means there's another 20% fee, I believe, added in for the courtesy of having the payment plan. So now we're talking about raising that to $500, and then they're going to get on a payment plan for that. And these people are in debt to the court system. And many of them don't even have a job. This is not making people's lives better. It doesn't discourage their use of cannabis. When people get out of jail, in a lot of cases, or get off of probation, the first thing they do is they load up a pipe and they smoke cannabis. As soon as they're off of the probation and they're not facing any kind of testing anymore, in fact, many times while they are facing testing, they'll still use cannabis, and then they'll violate their probation, and then they get taken right back into a jail cell. So I don't think that you could raise it to $2,000 and it wouldn't have an effect on whether or not people are going to use cannabis. They're going to take the risk because they enjoy it. Ultimately, this isn't a violation. I've heard a couple of people say this could be charged as a violation. I've looked at the language here. It says very clearly this is a misdemeanor. Now, I would certainly support it if it were made into a violation, because then it wouldn't be as serious of a criminal record for someone in the future. And by the way, the annulment process costs a few $100s at least. You're looking at $200 and $100 here. So you're probably looking at throwing another $300 at the court system to just get something like this wiped off of your record. No big deal for the wealthy, but for poor people, it's probably pretty prohibitive. And further, the claim is always trotted out by the police that no one's sitting in jail for small cannabis crimes. And while overall that can be a true statement, I've been in jail for peaceful civil disobedience before, and I've met the people who are in there for cannabis-related offenses. One guy was in there for a bowl pack's worth of cannabis, which is about that much, about the size of your thumb. But he was there for his third offense. So again, the idea that this enforcement is prohibiting people in the future from continuing to get arrested is just not true. People will continue to use, and they'll continue to get arrested for it, and our courts and our police will continue to waste their time on these things. Further, the idea is frequently presented that it's sending the wrong message to teenagers. I'm sorry to break this news to you, but teenagers aren't paying attention to what the Senate or the House of the state of New Hampshire does. Teenagers, I didn't pay attention when I was a teenager. I'm paying attention now because I realize it's pretty important to pay attention to what you guys are up to. But teenagers are busy doing teenage things like shopping and whatever else it is that they do. They're not reading the House calendar to see what's going on or what the opinion of the state house is. Teens for a long time are going to continue using cannabis, and that brings me to my final point about Senator Cataldo, your question about, is this a gateway drug? I suspect that if you talked to everyone who rides a motorcycle, that almost all of them would tell you that they started by driving a car. Marijuana is so popular It's literally used on a regular basis by millions upon millions of people in just the United States alone. In New Hampshire, it's one of the most popular drugs aside from alcohol. So of course, when you talk to someone who's a heroin addict, there's a good chance that they're going to say, well, yeah, I had marijuana before I had heroin. They may also say, I had alcohol before I had heroin. But no one's calling alcohol a gateway drug. I guarantee you almost everyone who's a heroin addict has also had alcohol, likely before they ever tried heroin. But if you look at most marijuana users, the supermajority of them do not go on to use heroin or those harder drugs. In fact, the government's own Institute of Medicine study, the federal government in 1999, did a study on the question of, well, is this actually a gateway drug? And of course, they were expecting the study would find that it was, but the study actually found that it wasn't a gateway drug. What they found was that prohibition was a much larger factor in whether or not people would go on to harder drugs. Meaning that in order to acquire marijuana, one must go through a black market dealer to purchase the marijuana. Well, guess what? That black market dealer may also have other things like heroin that he would rather that person get addicted to, because the addiction of heroin is a much more profound and significant addiction. So the government's own study showed not a gateway drug. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony this morning. Are there any questions? Senator Cataldo.
Thank you. Let me go back a few years, and I'm sure you're not old enough to understand, but I'll tell you that anyway. Let's go back 40 years ago. Was it a gateway drug? Yes, it was. You ever drive a motorcycle?
No, thankfully not.
You ever drive a car?
Really dangerous. Yes, a car. Yes.
What's the difference?
Motorcycle is more dangerous, in my opinion.
Let me follow up with that. It all depends whose eyes you're looking at, okay? Between a motorcycle and a car. If you drive it safely, it's fine. I'm looking back, your organization, does Liberty Party, is that what it is?
New Hampshire Liberty Party. Mm-hmm.
And does the party believe that marijuana is not a gateway?
Well, the party doesn't take individual positions on that. The party just stands for individual liberty and choice. And one being able to own one's body and decide what to do with it, whether it's put alcohol into it or nothing at all, or cannabis or whatever. It's your body, you should have that choice.
You bring a follow-up on that too. I'm not going to bring alcohol into it, because I ain't going to go back to prohibition. This is the 20th century. Okay? That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at something that I know is a gateway drug. I've seen it. For 40 years I've seen it. It's about time we do something about it and get these kids squared away. And that's your job. Get these kids to understand this is a gateway. Get away from that. Because you're going to lead to someplace up and you're going to probably die. Right? That's it.
I don't know if that was a question, but I'd like to respond to it anyway.
Sure.
I understand that there are some tragic stories out there, and there's no doubt about that. Drug addiction is a personal tragedy. And one thing's for sure, you're not making someone's life better by putting them in jail or layering fine upon fine on top of them. That's going to drive them to more depression. If you go to jail for whether it's heroin, marijuana, whatever, I don't care what it is. If you go to jail, you're going to lose your job if you have one. You're going to probably lose your home because you can't make your rent payments or whatever payments. So then you get out of jail and now you have no home and no job. Is that going to lead someone to use more mind-altering substances or fewer mind-altering substances? I submit to you that that would put someone in a position where they would spiral further down the drain. So the system that you have is not a compassionate one. It's a system that uses the force and the violence of the state against these people who are not monsters, most of them. They're just people who want to, in a lot of cases, get away from their reality, and they're using drugs as an escape from that. And making their reality worse by putting them in a jail cell or layering fines on top of their life is not helping them. It's not compassionate, and I don't think it's very effective, and I think it's creating the opposite of your intended results.
One follow-up, Madam Chair. I'm not going to use the word compassionate. However, there is an alternative. Rather than put them in jail, give them 2 years in the military, like they did back in the 40s, in the 50s. That might change their minds.
I don't think...
Can I answer that one?
That's it.
Senator Cataldo, they won't take them.
Well, further, I think we learned from the Vietnam War that you don't want people who don't want to be in the military to be in the military. Then you've got people injecting heroin while they're on the battlefield if they can, and that's not going to lead to good things.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you very much for your testimony this morning, Mr. Freeman. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to Senate Bill 498? Okay, seeing none, We'll close.
We'd like to invite you to visit freekeen.com. Freekeen.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. Freekeen.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. Freekeen.com.
I should be in Keene, New Hampshire with the Free Staters.